What's happening, everyone? We are back. Another reaction today. A little bit overdue. This is V's appearance on IU's palette. So we've got V and IU today. I've seen IU once or twice before. Obviously, I'm quite familiar with V. Okay, let's do this.
어떻게 팔레트에 출연을 하게 됐을까? B 씨가
팬분들이 요청이 진짜 많았어요.
팔레트에 나와달라.
팔레트 진짜 좋은 프로다.
진짜?
진짜 너무
오.
호비 거 봤는데 너무 좋았다. 너무 이런 얘기가 너무 많아서 고민이 됐죠, 사실.
Two words that I'd use to describe V are gentle charm. And you can tell she appreciates him. And the thing I like about IU, she's not hiding her appreciation.
진짜?
진짜 너무
The more V can kind of be himself and express himself, and the more he can see someone appreciate that in him, the more comfortable he's going to be. I can see already them being a good fit in that sense. I can see that she appreciates him, and I know V appreciates the appreciation.
굉장히 재즈하고 좀
맞아요.
클래식하고 그런 음악들을 좋아하길래 저도 그때 당시 의외다라고 생각을 했는데 그래서 이번 솔로 앨범을 듣고 이번에 진짜 하고 싶은 걸 하는구나.
맛있습니다.
본인이 가장 자신 있고 잘하는 걸 하는구나 라고 저는 좀 편하게 받아들였죠.
See, that's cool for a guest to hear. I think that's important for someone like V to hear. And
하고 싶은 걸 하는구나.
hey, like this is the music it feels like that you've wanted to create. She's essentially like showing that she understands him. I know for myself and the people that I speak with, I'm always more motivated to open up if I feel understood. So I can see that with IU right away.
씨의 솔로 앨범을 처음 딱 이렇게 듣고 공개되는 그런 컨셉 사진이라든지 뮤직비디오나 이런 걸 좀 보고 와, 아예 반전으로 나왔네? 라는 생각이 좀 들었어요. 저는 톤 자체도 되게 화려하다고 생각했고 그 진짜 말씀하신 것처럼 화려한 액세서리, 화려한
Yeah, she like IU's demonstrating her knowledge of V and his work and his music video, and I think this is actually a good thing we can take away too, like being very specific about the things you notice about a person or the things you notice about a person's work.
톤 자체도 되게 화려하다고 생각했고
I think there's a lot we can learn from IU as a host, as an interviewer, as a communicator here. She's really showing that she's paying attention, and that's really what it comes down to. A lot of the time with human connections is, we want to feel understood. We want to feel like the other person pays attention to us, really.
아미분들도 방탄소년단에 있어서의 제 모습을 안 본 지 좀 거진 한 2년 정도 되다 보니까 그거를 그리워했던 이제 아미분들도 많으실 텐데 이번에 이런 제 스타일대로 그림으로 간 이유는
And then V, man, I'm just thinking about how calm and cool he is, He's just got such a easy way about him. He just like knows who he is, it feels like, so well. I think a lot of people sometimes mistake confidence as people who are extroverted or boisterous. And I know V can kind of turn on that side of his personality, and there's moments where he's, super chatty and outgoing, but ultimately, I don't think confidence necessarily presents itself in that way. I think confidence essentially is, how comfortable you are with yourself. And that also goes into how well you know yourself. I think the more you know yourself, the better chance you have of being comfortable with yourself. And I think V is a guy, I've said this time and time again, who just feels like he really knows himself well. But he's respectful, and he's like I said, gentle. He's not brash in any way, He's not brash, he's not harsh. That's definitely very admirable.
버전으로
네.
듣고 오겠습니다.
제 성격을 음악으로 표현해 본 적은 한 번도 없었던 것 같아요. 그래서 저는 항상 이제 행동이나 말이나 그런 게 좀 느릿느릿하고 그런 걸 너무 사랑하고 좋아하고 하다 보니까 슬로우하게 춤추는 걸 좋아해서 슬로우 댄스.
See, that's cool. That's something we were talking about before, like V knowing himself. And this is an example of that. Like, he's just a little slower to do things. He's a little slower to maybe put songs together. And not only does he understand that's a part of who he is, sort of his personality and the way he operates, but on top of that, he also appreciates that about himself. He said, I love that about myself.
제가 뭐 보기에는 너무 사랑하고 좋아하고 하다 보니까
So again, I think this comes back to the very important concept that BTS talks about a lot, which is loving yourself. You know, V could have been hard on himself for processing things slowly or taking a long time to make music or make decisions or whatever it is. But instead, he chose to look at that as a positive. It's really important, I think, to take these things into consideration and apply these things to our lives, because a lot of the time we're really hard on ourselves and upset that we might not be as good at, or we might not be as good at finishing certain tasks as quickly, or we might be really sensitive to certain things. And I think if we can, instead of fighting it, kind of embracing it and saying, you know what, maybe there are positives in this. Maybe this is a good thing. I get to work on these projects for longer. I get to absorb this information and really understand it on a deeper level because I'm not rushing through it. And I love this about myself. I think is really important. So I think V is a really good kind of teacher for that, it seems like. And I just really like what he said. I think that's just, there's a great lesson in that. There's a great lesson in what he said.
아니 저는 B 씨가 워낙에 화려한 것도 잘
아.
봤지만 아직 칭찬 안 했어.
오케이.
아직 안 했어 칭찬을. 화려한 게 워낙에 잘 봤죠.
Yeah, she's totally in tune with V. You know, she's starting to compliment V, and you can see V's reacting to it and kind of getting shy. And she's like, I haven't even started with the compliments yet. So she's very in tune and just very attentive. You know, her energy is, she's extremely present with V when she's complimenting him. She's like very intentional. There's no like sarcasm there. It's very sincere.
찍은 사진들이 전 더 좋더라고요 오히려.
어우 진짜요? 저 이런 칭찬 진짜 너무 좋아합니다. 놀면서 촬영했어 를 제대로 한 것 같아요.
이야 그 결과물이 그래서 그렇게 좋구나.
She's just playing off him really well. And then V said, I just had fun doing the shoot. And she's listening to him and she's playing off what he said. And she's like, yeah, that's why you had such great results. So again, just like she's finding all these ways to slip in these compliments. And that's true. I think there's just like a lesson in that as well. I think when we have fun doing something, especially when we have fun doing our job, we see the results reflect that. The results generally reflect the fun that we have and the work that we do. She kind of feels like his big sister here almost. Just someone who wants to reassure their little brother that they're doing a great job and they should be proud of themselves.
그런 부분에 있어서도
네.
B 씨의 의견이 많이 반영됐겠네요.
그냥 이쁜 거 잘 꽂아줬어요.
아, 그냥 그건 회사 측에서
네.
다 골라주셨어. 아, 근데 사실 어떤 거를 골라도 A 컷이지 않았을까. 받아야지.
감사합니다.
You know, it's just funny to see the contrast in their communication styles where like she's kind of like super like attentive and kind of expressing herself, you know, a little bit more animated, enthusiastic way, which makes sense. She's the host, she's the interviewer. And V kind of just, he's pretty soft-spoken, doesn't really change his pitch patterns too much, carries out a pretty similarly consistent tone throughout his dialogue and when he speaks. He doesn't ever seem to overly project his voice. It's very rare that he does. He kind of stays within himself. There's a confidence in that. There's a comfort in that. And that's what I mean by V's comfort within himself. He stays within himself. He doesn't reach. He doesn't embellish. When he does, that's just more part of his charm, and he does it intentionally. But, you know, when he's just communicating normally, it's very soft-spoken. There's like a real, honest, gentle nature to V, and his communication reflects that.
게임을 준비했거든.
아,
나도 조금 약해.
오케이.
그래서 한번 가볼까? 이거
네.
뭐 걸고 해야지 근데.
여기 스태프분들 얼주가 쏘기.
오, 좋은데? 오케이.
You know, this is just another thought that came to my head. I think he's very sensitive to disappointing other people as well. You know, as important as it is for him to stay true to himself, I think if I had to guess, part of his battle, you know, when he is true to himself, there's still going to be people who are disappointed, or there's still going to be people that he upsets. And I think that still bothers him. You know, everything that I know about V and just sort of like how sensitive of a soul he is, I think, you know, it affects him more deeply than we might think. Like he's conscious of how his words and his actions and his everything he does kind of impacts others. So as much as he is himself, which he is very much, I think there's still a sensitivity around how others receive him, which could also play into, you know, the gentleness that we see. Him not hurting others and disappointing others in a way is also him, I feel like, looking after himself because he knows that hurts him.
불
앞 글자만 알려주시면 안 돼요?
그래.
어?
스스로
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 스스로 불가능한 것들을
오!
재해석해서 가능하게 하라.
오!
Yeah, he's like 80% loose now. Like he's you know, you see him get off his chair. He's loosening up a little bit more. Still that kind of like reservation, not wanting maybe to also be the center of attention. I think he's aware of his power in that way too. Like maybe he is aware of not wanting to like make it about him, like because he has the ability to be the most charming guy in the room. And I think he knows that. So I think maybe there's an awareness there to kind of like reel his charms in, to not necessarily want to be a guy that comes off as too kind of center of attention or self-involved in any way. And maybe once he feels like people really know him and know his kind of character and his goodness, then he can feel more comfortable kind of being the center of attention because they know who he is. Maybe there's an aspect or an element of him kind of just being a little bit more restrictive or hesitant because of that, because he doesn't want to bring the attention to himself too much. Perhaps.
야, 그래서 우리 듀엣으로 준비하느라고 지금 밴드들 막 머리 터졌어.
그래?
오!
난 전혀 아니었어. 나는 왜냐면은 누나가
아, 솔로로
불편할까
하는 게
봐.
더 좋았어?
아니, 그게 또 아니고 누나 귀 아프잖아.
나 노래 덜하게 해주려고?
나는 그 부담을 주고 싶진 않아서.
Yeah, the charm's coming on a little bit more now with V, and you can see he's kind of making more eye contact with her. V's he's interesting actually when you kind of just look at his eye contact, because you'll just kind of see V looking down and he's listening, but you know, he's not necessarily looking at the person that he's speaking to or the person that's speaking to him. And then sometimes he'll kind of just like get right in your space and, you know, really kind of hold eye contact with you and let the person that he's speaking to know that he's there with you. You know, so he can really kind of turn it on in that way. I think that might be part of his charm too. There's like an unpredictability there. Like you never know when he's gonna kind of like tease you and crack a joke and hold eye contact with you. He kind of like mixes it in there. There's a sincerity to his charm. There's like a sweetness to it. He's not trying to get you necessarily to like him. A lot of the time, people might charm you to kind of get them on your side. And I don't ever get the sense that like V's necessarily trying to get someone on his side. It's more expressing his charms in a way to make them smile. Or even his humility is a charm sometimes when he gets shy about something and he doesn't want to like express his skills or express his pride and he gets kind of shy. Like that's charming. So I think that's the distinction. The distinction in his charm is it doesn't ever feel like it's about him. It feels like it's about just making the other person feel good, and that's it.
섞이는 목소리야.
그래?
그거 엄청 장점이거든.
아, 그래?
그러니까 뭐 여성 보컬, 남성 보컬 다 가리지 않고 그냥 아예 다른 장르의 가수들이랑 이렇게 협업을 해도 되게 잘 묻을 목소리 같아. 그걸 느꼈어.
생각하고 있어.
그래.
You know, I think that's why it kind of takes V longer to make decisions. And he's saying he's like thinking about maybe doing duets with other artists. You know, I think he kind of like reflects deeply on if this is true to him. He reflects deeply on whether, you know, this makes sense for him as a person and if it feels, like I said, kind of authentic to him. You know, and I think, again, this is what he appreciates about himself. But, you know, I think he takes the time to make sure these decisions feel right before following through.
더 잘하잖아.
아, 나는 리허설도 잘하고 건방도 잘하는. 그럼 이번엔 내 컬러 스위치를 한번 해볼까? 근데 이 곡은 사실 좀
내가
추천을 해줘서 이 곡을 하면 잘 어울릴 것 같다라고.
You know, I think again, I use a skilled communicator. I think, and she's joking around, and she's saying, you know, I think I'm good at both performances and rehearsals. Yeah, I feel like she's kind of like half joking there to kind of see what V's response is. So she's like testing the waters with V and seeing how he responds and what he responds to. And I think she's just sort of like keeping the floor open. Like she wants V to feel comfortable and loose, and she wants V to be able to tease her. So I think her saying these things is her kind of throwing out some bait for V to kind of pick up on. And V himself, like he's still kind of like testing his limits of comfort. He's sort of testing his boundaries in a way. But again, I think V's conscious of not wanting to come across as braggadocious or arrogant. He doesn't want people to feel upset or disappointed. I think he's conscious of that.
그치, 또 바꿔야 돼. 다 했어.
이거 나 놀리는 거
아니야,
아니죠?
BTS 형들 나와서 다 했어.
놀리는 거
아니,
아니죠?
진짜 안 봤어?
진짜예요.
진짜 막 다 했어.
아 그래요?
막 슈가랑 막 제이 없이 다 했어.
아 난 부끄럽진 않아.
오케이, 갈게.
나 놀리는 걸까 봐.
자,
Maybe V is a little sensitive to people kind of teasing him. I think perhaps there's some sensitivity around that. Like he takes it well, but I think he might be more sensitive to the teasing that he gets more than a lot of the other BTS guys. You know, although it's in good fun, I still do think he's quite sensitive. You know, I don't think he maybe knows her well enough to know that she appreciates him and she's doing it because she wants to bond with him, you know? And he's trying to take it in well, and I think he kind of is, but I think there's times still where he could be a little sensitive about it. Anyway.
가사가 듀엣이잖아.
그러니까 서로의 상대가 돼서 1, 2절을 그렇게 부르면 좋을 것 같아서
진짜 너무 좋아.
해볼까? 준비됐어?
전 준비됐습니다. 준비됐나요?
긴장 이제 다 풀렸어요.
오케이.
우리 해야 되는 거 있어.
Yeah, V's just effortlessly charming. Yeah, like he's just effortlessly charming. I think that might be the best way to put it. Like just sort of his kind of gentle, almost like nonchalant way of like communicating makes it feel like his charms are effortless. It doesn't feel like it's like this manufactured charm, you know? It doesn't feel forced at all. It's natural and it's effortless.
이번 앨범으로서 이루고 싶은 목표 같은 거?
나는 음악을 좋아하는 사람들이 내 음악 좋아해 줬으면 좋겠어. 앨범은 너무 좋은데 혹시 나만 그럴까 하고 하는 마음에 그 영화도 공개하기 전에는 그 떨리잖아.
그치.
앨범도 똑같잖아.
맞아.
나오기 전에는 모르니까 사람들의 반응이.
Yeah, you know, I think what contributes to V's nerves as well, it's like, you know V is creating music that like speaks to his heart and soul. It speaks to who he is truly. And I think maybe obviously there's a real vulnerability in that, which I think contributes to the nerves, right? Because if you're just kind of putting out music that you feel like sounds good, you might not have that same sort of level of fear with the public response because you're not like really kind of like showing yourself to the world. So if they reject the music, it isn't necessarily like feel like they're rejecting you personally. And I think maybe with V, because he's sort of like bearing himself to the world in a way, that's where that kind of fear and those nerves really come from as well. Like, this is who I am. I'm showing you me.
팬분들보다 날 더 잘하는 사람은 이 세상에 없어.
맞아.
우리
그것도
아빠도 몰라. 우리 아빠도
야, 아버지 보시면 섭섭하시겠다.
아니
아버지한테
몰라.
영상 편지 하나.
아빠보다 팬들이 더 잘 알아.
클로징인데.
Yeah, again, so it's like this effortless charm, but it's also like an unpredictable charm. Because V will be in his own world sometimes, and then the next second, he's kind of teasing you, and he's a little bit more boisterous, and there's an unpredictability to him too that I really enjoy watching. And I think the unpredictability comes from just sort of him going with the sort of his emotion at the moment. Emotionally, things are changing within him, and sometimes he feels shy, so he embraces that shy feeling, and then sometimes he feels expressive and he embraces that expressive feeling. As his feelings within inside him shift, he's really in tune with those feelings, and as a result, he communicates those outwardly. And I think that's where his unpredictability comes from. But either way, I think he's just kind of like responding honestly to what he's feeling inside of him. You know, he's just really connected to himself in that way I've talked about.
보다 더 많이 아미분들이 기다리셨을 텐데 정말 열심히 차곡차곡 준비해서 이렇게 나왔어요. 정말 많이 사랑해 주셨으면 좋겠고 그리고 저도 정말 많이 보고 싶었습니다. 앞으로 이쁜 마음으로 다양하게 또 보답을 할게요.
I like how he dresses Army. You know, there was a smile on his face. There was almost like a hint of like mischievousness. It was almost like speaking to Army kind of brought out a different side of him that created this joy within him in a way, and this almost like youthfulness in him in a way. Like there was mischief, there was a little bit of shyness, like, hey, like he knows that Army has his back so hard, and it's almost like he feels the love and he wants to give it back, and he understands that he almost like looks at it as his responsibility, it feels like, to give back. The love that I get and the dedication and the loyalty that I get from Army, like this is like, I need to do this. And no, this is my, like, that's sort of the feeling you get from V.
초상화를 그렸습니다. 제가 동생이니까 제가 많이 장난꾸러기처럼 이렇게 잘 놀고 가지 않았나 생각을 해서 이렇게 그렸습니다.
Okay, I think my new phrase for V is just effortless charm, and IU is just like a masterful host. She really is. And guys, if you want to watch my uncut reaction and analysis, plus all my reactions to the music performances on this episode, all you need to do is go to my Patreon page. I've also got a ton of other exclusive BTS reactions over there. I've included the link for my Patreon in my description below. Other than that, I appreciate you being here. I'll catch you soon. Peace.